All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live cooking demonstration. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm the Wellness Program Administrator with Georgia State University's Employee Development and Wellness Services. By trade, I am a registered dietitian, so I'm always on the hunt for easy and healthy recipes that we can just work into our week. I know things get busy between our work, other things going on in our life, our other obligations, and sometimes it can be hard to find time to just fit in a good meal. So the goal of this program is to find recipes that are quick and simple while also being tasty and nutritious. A couple quick things before we get started. We are going to be making use of the WebEx chat feature today. So if you've got any questions or comments, go ahead and post those in the chat and we'll be sure to address them at the end of the presentation. I'm joined today by my colleague, Cheryl Johnson-Ransaw, who will be able to assist with any technical issues that may pop up. If you've got problems with the audio or the video, go ahead and send a comment, but make sure you send it to all panelists. This will ensure that Cheryl can see it and help troubleshoot anything that may arise. We're also going to be recording today's presentation so that you can view it again at a later time or share it with a colleague who may not have been able to attend. With that being said, we will go ahead and dive in. So what we're going to be making today is baked feta and tomato chickpeas. If you're familiar with the concept of a sheet pan meal, this is basically that. Now, traditionally, a sheet pan meal might involve some chicken, some different vegetables. You put it on a sheet pan, very simple, pop it in the oven for a little bit, and it's done. We're applying that same principle here, but we're going to be doing a vegetarian meal. So we're going to rely on a plant-based source of protein as well as our feta cheese to add some additional protein to it. And we'll walk you through the whole process as we go. Something worth mentioning is at the end of this demonstration, you will get a copy of this recipe along with the nutrition information. So if you like what you see today, you'll be able to make it yourself at home and enjoy just that tasty dish. Now, you're going to need, in terms of equipment, a cutting board, a chef's knife, or just any form of knife that you can cut with. We're going to need a baking sheet, and then we're going to use an oven. So you'll want that oven set to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, which I've gone ahead and taken care of here. The rest of it, as you'll see, is going to be super, super easy. I'm always talking about I want simple recipes, right? Today's is probably one of the simplest that I've ever done, but it comes out super, super delicious. So really worth the time investment. So let's get started. What we're going to do is we are going to set everything up on our sheet pan. That's just going to be the basis. We're going to put everything in there. We're going to try to keep the dishes we use to a minimum too. So no mixing bowls, nothing like that. We're going to all just mix it on the sheet pan. This is truly working with as little equipment as possible just to make your life a little easier. So the first ingredient is going to be chickpeas, or garbanzo beans as they're also called. They're the same food. You'll want to get a 15-ounce can, and I recommend looking for one that's lower in sodium. It may say no salt added on it. It may say low sodium, or you may just want to compare brands. I shop at Kroger frequently, and their Simple Truth, which is their organic brand, happens to have a little bit less sodium in it. So even if you're not concerned about organic foods, you can get this one just because it's got a little less salt, which is great because we're trying to make this a heart-healthy dish and balance the total amount of sodium that goes into it. So just a regular 15-ounce can, you'll want to rinse and drain it, get rid of all the extra juice that it's packed in, and just focus on those chickpeas or garbanzo beans. Now, if you're not familiar with these are used to make hummus. They're great on salads. You can put them in wraps. They're really versatile, but they have a pretty neutral flavor and they contribute a lot of good nutrition to our meal. They're going to add a plant-based source of protein. They're going to add some fiber, which we're going to talk about fiber a couple times today, but overall, fiber helps with our system. It helps our just GI system, everything kind of move through, keeps us regular, which is great. It can lower our blood cholesterol. It can help with our blood sugar after we eat a meal, helping you have sustained energy over time, and can leave you just feeling a little fuller and more satisfied. So if you're trying to maintain a healthy weight or even lose weight, fiber is really good to work into your diet. So these are really a superstar, and they're super affordable too. So we'll go ahead and set the sheet pan here. And what we're going to do is we are just going to add that can of chickpeas. We're just going to have it in a pile for now, and we'll come back to it in just a moment. The next ingredient we're going to work with are going to be either cherry or grape tomatoes, entirely up to you. And you're going to want about 10 ounces of them. That's just what this little clamshell size is at the grocery store. If you find one that's 8 ounces or 12 ounces, don't worry about it. A few extra or a few less tomatoes isn't going to hurt the recipe. And in fact, if you want to add more tomatoes to it, you certainly can, but we're just working with a 10-ounce container today. Now I've gone ahead and rinsed these, so they are good to go. Something I always recommend people do is as you're going to be cutting tomatoes, go ahead and just do a quick eyeball, make sure that there aren't any that are on their way out. Sometimes you might get a great batch of tomatoes and there's just a couple bad ones in the bunch and you can just toss those to the side. Now we're just going to cut these in halves today, keeping it simple. You actually can leave them fully intact if you like, though I know some people don't really like the sort of textural feel of biting into a full one. So cutting it in half can be nice. It also gives you some smaller pieces of tomato to bite into when you eat the recipe. Of course, if you prefer, you can quarter them and go a little further, but that's entirely up to you. And as we cut, we'll just add those to the sheet pan. Now, nutritionally speaking, tomatoes are awesome. I talk about them a lot on this program. They have so many different nutrients in them. They are a source of vitamin A. They are a source of vitamin C. So we're seeing some good things for our immune system and our overall just cell health in our body. They are also a source of fiber, which we just mentioned with the chickpeas. So this is another source of fiber we're adding to the recipe. And then my favorite thing to talk about with them is they have lycopene. Now, lycopene is a powerful antioxidant, and an antioxidant, if you're not familiar, is something that has cancer preventative or cancer fighting properties, some people might say. So eating foods like fruits and vegetables that have antioxidants in them can lower your risk of certain cancers. So it's really great to eat those just throughout your life to stay healthy. And tomatoes are a superstar. They've got one called lycopene in it. Now, there are a number of different antioxidants that you can get from a variety of foods, but today we're just talking about the tomatoes. Generally speaking, though, if you're looking to add more to your diet, fruits and vegetables are the way to go. That's why we're always talking about add more fruits and vegetables to what you're doing, because they're so good for us. So we've got our cherry or grape tomatoes chopped up there. We're going to add quite a bit of seasoning to this. We want to give it some flavor, very plain right now. And what we're going to start with is red wine vinegar. This is just going to add a little bit of acid to the dish, which is going to bring out some nice flavors. We're going to do just 1 teaspoon of red wine vinegar. So a little bit will go a long way for this. And you can just add that on top because we're going to stir it all together in a bit. We'll do half a teaspoon of dried basil leaves, half a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Okay. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. This is going to help add some heart-healthy fats to the dish, make it a little more satisfying. It's also going to help sort of lubricate things. We don't want them sticking to the pan. We don't want them to get burned, so we'll mix that around well in a moment. Now, the reason we're using extra virgin olive oil is that olive oil is a heart-healthy fat. That means it's got less saturated fat in it and more unsaturated fat. When we're trying to make heart-healthy decisions, choosing foods that are higher in unsaturated fats and lower in saturated fats just helps our body out. Things like avocados, certain vegetable oils, nuts and seeds, those are all great sources. So we're working with some good heart health ingredients today. And then next we're going to do 2 teaspoons actually of minced garlic. Now, if you want to use fresh garlic, happen to have it on hand, you are welcome to. A couple cloves of fresh garlic will really bring out some excellent stuff here. Maybe just a little more. Garlic is one of my favorite ingredients. I think it makes pretty much everything taste good. So feel free to up the ante a bit if you want to add a little more garlic to it. All right, so we used 2 teaspoons though. Again, that's up to you. And then the final seasoning ingredient, this is actually really important. We're going to be using fresh rosemary today. Now you can buy seasoning in its ground form, its dried form, like basil, for example. Very convenient, easy to keep in the cupboard. You don't have to worry about it too much. But every once in a while, bringing in some truly fresh herbs can make a huge difference in your dish. And this one, the flavor is really dependent on this fresh rosemary. So while normally I say, yeah, you can substitute dried for fresh, I really want to recommend that you go to the store and get some fresh rosemary. Now, if you shop at Kroger, in their produce section, you can find these little packages of herbs. You'll find basil, you'll find things like rosemary, whatever you're looking for. And they're about $2. They're not too expensive, and they'll last for a good while. So we are just going to do a teaspoon of the fresh rosemary today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just peel the leaves off of here. I don't really want to get the stem. Sometimes when you get the rosemary, the little branches, you'll notice the middle of them is pretty tough, kind of like a twig from a tree branch. we don't really want to bite into that. So we're just looking for the leaves. That's where we're going to get our flavor from. So I'm just pulling those leaves off and adding them here. And when you get fresh herbs, you can really smell the difference just being in the kitchen with it. As soon as I take that out of the container, it's got a very vibrant scent to it. And what we're going to do is just pack this together in a bunch. And we're going to use our knife. And I'm just going to sort of rock the knife through it, going left to right. And then I'll regroup, kind of bunch it together, and repeat that process. And how fine you want to cut it is up to you. I do recommend trying to do fairly small pieces, and the reason for that is that when we've got the small pieces, it can spread around and really make sure that everything in our dish is going to get a little bit of the flavor evenly. If you got a big bunch, you'll have a bite that'll just have a ton of flavor in it, and then the rest may feel a little lackluster. So definitely recommend doing that. You may need to scrape some of the pieces off the knife if they stick, and regroup, and then just run the knife through like so. And once you've got that there, you can measure it out and make sure you have exactly 1 teaspoon. This isn't an exact science. Again, a little more, a little less won't hurt you. And we are just going to sprinkle that on top of our chickpeas, tomatoes, and all that other tasty seasoning. And as I mentioned, if you go to make this dish, you're going to smell that rosemary. It's going to smell so fresh, and it adds a really unique flavor to the final dish. So next up, what we're going to do is using a spatula, a spoon, whatever, we're just going to mix this around. We were, like I said, trying to keep the dishes we use to a minimum. So we avoided an extra mixing bowl today, but we do still want to mix things up. We want all the tomatoes and chickpeas to come into contact with some of that oil so that they have a little bit of that nice flavor on there. We don't want them to stick to the pan too much. We want to mix the garlic around, pick up the black pepper, pick up the rosemary, that red wine vinegar that we added in. So just give it a little stir, and you can kind of move the oil around to make sure that the pan is evenly coated, and you can see that. And then what we're going to do is sort of shake it together. And the final ingredient here, believe it or not, we are almost done. It's that easy. The final ingredient here is going to be a block of feta cheese. Now, frequently when people have feta cheese, they have feta cheese crumbles, which are on top of a salad. They're kind of dried. They're very tasty, very delicious. It's a very fun salad topping. We're working with something a little different today. So this is a block of feta cheese. If you go to the grocery store, usually next to where the feta cheese would be, it's in a refrigerated section, or just anytime they have other like fresh cheeses like this, mozzarella, things like that, you should be able to find a block of feta. Now, in most grocery stores I've been to, it's not going to be right next to the shredded cheese. There's usually a separate section. Sometimes it's in the like deli area or things like that with the fresher cheese like this. So it can be an 8-ounce block, or if you happen to find a 6-ounce block, that's fine too. We're going to take this out, and I'm going to sort of carve out a little space in the middle here and place that block of feta cheese. And for the cooking, I'm going to gather all the ingredients, the tomatoes and chickpeas around it, kind of making a little wall of them. We want to keep them in a single layer, so they cook evenly, but we want to surround the cheese too. As the cheese cooks, it is going to, some of the flavor will kind of move out into the chickpeas and tomatoes, which will taste really, really nice. And we're just going to cook it like that in its giant block form. Seems a little strange, but when you're done with it, what's going to happen is the cheese will be nice and gooey, and you'll be able to spread it out into the rest of the dish. We'll talk about that in just a moment. For now, what I'm going to do is go ahead, and with my oven set to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, we're just going to put this on a middle or top rack, and we're going to bake it for about 20 minutes or until the cheese turns a golden brown on the top. I'll show you what that looks like, but usually it's 20 to 23 minutes depending on your oven. So let's go ahead and set that in. And you can periodically check on it if you want to turn on the little oven light, keep an eye on it. Again, looking for the golden brown. Now I've gone ahead and pre-baked one of these, so I'll grab that and show you what we're looking for visually. So when the dish comes out, let me show you here. Hopefully you can see that browning on top of the cheese. It kind of looks like lasagna whenever you bake that. It is so tasty looking. The chickpeas get a little crispy. The tomatoes might even get a little charred in a way that I find really, really delicious. And you end up with this very, very nice, simple heat pan meal here. Now, what I recommend doing is taking this and serving it with one of a couple different things, and it'll be up to you. If you want to get fancy with it, which I recommend, buying whole wheat pita bread is the best pairing option. So at most of the grocery stores I shop at, near where you're able to pick up the cheeses, you'll usually be able to find some fresh breads. Not the like bread that's in the regular grocery store aisle, but over in the deli or bakery section, you can find whole wheat pita bread. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing 100% whole wheat or whole grain is we were talking about fiber earlier, and 100% whole grain or whole wheat pita bread will have more fiber, it'll have more protein and more B vitamins. So that pita bread works really, really nice as sort of a Mediterranean dish here. And the way that you eat it is, I'll actually show you here. Once the cheese has been cooked, you can press into it with the spatula and it'll separate and you'll have these nice like gooey pieces of it. And you can mix it up and sort of dip the pita bread into it. If you want to use pita chips, that is certainly an option as well. And you'll kind of scoop up the cheese, scoop up some of the tomatoes and chickpeas and eat it that way. A little unconventional. You can almost think of it like nachos in a way, almost like Mediterranean nachos kind of. But it's very, very tasty. The feta cheese is delicious. You'll notice we didn't add salt to this. We had black pepper, we had a lot of different ingredients, but we didn't add any salt. And the reason for that is the canned chickpeas have a small amount in them. We picked a lower sodium variety. And the feta cheese contributes a good bit of sodium overall, so we wanted to try to keep it to a minimum. But when you eat it with the cheese, when you eat it with that pita bread, there'll be just enough sodium to give you that nice flavor. And then we're relying on things like the garlic, the black pepper, the fresh rosemary to bring the rest of the flavor home for us. So super, super simple. If you don't want to get pita bread, it's too much of a hassle, or you just want to use stuff you already have on hand, whole wheat toast will do really well too. Again, I'm emphasizing that 100% whole grain, 100% whole wheat to get that extra nutrition in there. Just like you do with the pita bread, you could toast it and then sort of dip it into the chickpeas and the tomatoes. Now, I baked this one a little while ago, maybe like an hour before the presentation started. So the cheese separates pretty well, but it's not quite as gooey as it normally would be. I can kind of pick up a piece here and you can see it. But when it's fresh out of the oven, it's nice and almost liquidy in a way that you can dip right into it, very creamy, which takes us to talking about leftovers. So this makes 4 servings. You could divide the cheese block up into 4 servings evenly if you wanted to. And for storage, you'll want to keep them in an airtight container in the refrigerator. What I've done traditionally is sort of mixed it all together and just put it in a big container. And then when you go to eat it, you really want to heat it up. You want that cheese to have that gooey, melty texture to it. So I recommend microwaving it for about 30 seconds or so in a microwave-safe dish whenever you want to heat it, and that'll get the feta cheese back to that nice melting consistency. So in terms of nutrition, protein coming from our chickpeas, protein coming from our feta cheese, and then if you use the whole wheat pita bread or whole wheat toast, you'll be getting a little bit of extra protein from that. Our healthy fats coming in from the olive oil that we put in there. We've got a lot of fiber and vitamins and minerals coming from our vegetables, being the chickpeas and the tomatoes. And as you saw, this was super easy. Doesn't really require any complex cooking skills. Just chopping up the tomatoes and the rosemary, and the rest of it we basically threw on a sheet pan, and it makes for a really tasty lunch. So we're going to send out a copy of that recipe. It will include the full breakdown of the nutrition information if you want to see how it might fit into your day. And we'll include a copy of the recording as well, in case you want to follow along for any reason. But the detailed directions and instructions will be on that recipe sheet that we send out. Now, I'm going to direct my attention to the chat here. I saw we had a comment. Someone mentioned it sounds like it would be good on a bed of lettuce. Yeah, definitely. What we've made here, it's a sheet pan meal, so we can do a lot of different things with it. If you wanted to put it on lettuce, what I'd really recommend doing is using a knife or something to maybe chop the feta cheese up into smaller pieces. And then if you want to do like a bed of greens, topping this on there would be really nice for adding a little bit more vegetable if you want to do it that way. I think that could be delicious. Similarly, I talked about doing pieces of pita bread or toast and sort of dipping it in and kind of scooping things up. If you wanted to, you could do the pita pocket thing and cut a piece of pita bread and fill it with some of the cheese, chickpeas, and tomatoes. Very, very flexible. You could also just eat this with a fork. It's that delicious. It's going to be really good. This is something I've made before, and my friends have really enjoyed it as well. So I encourage you to experiment and mix it up, see how you best like it. But the base recipe Takes about 20 minutes, maybe about 15 minutes of prep, and then you pop it in the oven for 20 and you're good to go. So really, really easy to work into a busy week, or maybe meal prepping on a Sunday to give you some lunches for those first couple days of the week. Make it a little bit easier for you. And we'll pause here for a moment. Let me check the chat. I don't think I see any other questions or comments. So I think we are all set. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time out of their day to join us for these cooking demonstrations. If you're curious about our past recipes, we actually upload most of our presentations to our EDWS YouTube page. You can just Google EDWS YouTube and we'll pop up there. Should be the first result. We've got recordings of our meditation sessions, our stretch breaks, our cooking demonstrations, and more. So maybe this recipe looked great and you're excited about it. Maybe it wasn't for you and you want to see what else we've got in our catalog. Our YouTube page is a great way to check that out. Additionally, we do presentations like this all the time throughout the month. We're always cooking up fun stuff, and those are posted to the GSU web calendar. They're posted to the USG Wellbeing Events calendar. But the best way to keep up with us is actually to get on our mailing list. Every Monday, we send out a list of all the different events we'll be doing. Like tomorrow, for example, we've got a guided meditation session from 12 to 12:30, so we encourage you to check that out. But if you're not already on the mailing list, you can get on it by emailing me directly at rsmith250@gsu.edu. And I see Cheryl just put that in the chat. Thank you, Cheryl. So if you want to get on that mailing list, never miss one of our events, go ahead and shoot me an email and we'll make sure you're included on there. But keep an eye out later today or tomorrow for a link to the recording and the recipe. There'll also be a little follow-up survey where you can let us know what you thought of today's presentation. If you've got any suggestions, we'd love to hear them. And with that being said, hope that you all have a great rest of your day and a pleasant end to your week. Thank you so much for attending. Take care.